A very influential politician in the United States has called on Israel to use nuclear bombs in Gaza, where more than 2 million Palestinian civilians are trapped in one of the most densely populated areas on Earth, including more than 1 million children. This is a clip of the U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham from the Republican Party calling live on TV for Israel to nuke Gaza.
So when we were faced with destruction as a nation after Pearl Harbor, fighting the Germans and the Japanese, we decided to end the war by bombing Hiroshima and Nagasaki with nuclear weapons. That was the right decision. Give Israel the bombs they need to end the war they can't afford to lose. Can I say this? Why is it okay for America to drop 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to end their existential threat war? Why was it okay for us to do that? I thought it was okay. To Israel, do whatever you have to do to survive as a Jewish state.
Senator, again, military officials say the technology has changed.
I'm going to respond to a few things there. In particular, the myth that the U.S. had to use nuclear bombs in order to end World War II. In fact, as I'll discuss in a few minutes here, the U.S. government published a report in 1946, after World War II, admitting that Japan was already on the verge of surrender, and the U.S. did not need to nuke Japan and therefore kill 200,000 civilians in order to end the war. In reality, the U.S. atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki was the first act of the Cold War. It was the U.S. threatening the Soviet Union. But before I get to that point, I want to mention that it's not just Lindsey Graham who has made this outrageous call to nuke Gaza. In fact, back in November, a minister in the Israeli government said the exact same thing. He said that Israel should drop nuclear bombs on Gaza. I'm reading a report here from the major Israeli newspaper, The Times of Israel. It notes that Israel's heritage minister, Amichai Eliyahu, proposed dropping nuclear bombs on Gaza Strip. And in the same interview, he said, quote, "There is no such thing as uninvolved civilians in Gaza." So he's saying that the 1 million children in Gaza are not civilians and justifying nuking them. He also called for ethnically cleansing the 2 million Palestinians out of Gaza, saying, quote, "They can go to Ireland or deserts. The monsters in Gaza should find a solution by themselves." So he's dehumanizing the 2 million civilians in Gaza as monsters. He said, again, this is a top Israeli official, he said, the northern Gaza Strip has no right to exist. And he said that anyone waving a Palestinian flag, quote, "should not continue living on the face of the earth." And by the way, this was not just a one-time throwaway comment from this top Israeli official. In January, he repeated his insistence that Israel should drop nuclear bombs on Gaza. This is a report from the Times of Israel newspaper. It notes that Israel's heritage minister, Amichai Eliyahu, suggested that Israel should drop nuclear bombs on Gaza. And he said, quote, "They know my position. Even in The Hague, they know my position." So he's basically taunting The Hague and saying, yeah, you should try me for calling for the G crime against the Palestinian people, eliminating them. Comments like these from top Israeli officials show why the International Court of Justice, the top UN legal authority, ruled back in January that Israel can be investigating for violating the Convention on the G crime, the worst possible crime a country could commit, the G crime. And Amnesty International, the mainstream human rights organization, has publicly said that Israel is violating this order given by the International Court of Justice. So Israel is engaged in the G crime to eliminate the Palestinian people. And in March, the top United Nations expert on Palestinian human rights published a report detailing how Israel is committing the G crime against the Palestinian people. And of course, it has the full backing of the U.S. government. These are the far-right extremists who run the Israeli regime, and they are fully backed by the United States, 100% backed by the U.S. empire, And in Washington, support for Israel is bipartisan, as we can see from the fact that Lindsey Graham is a Republican, and he has been an ally of Donald Trump. The Republicans and Trump and his supporters have been staunchly supporting Israel. And of course, the current U.S. government is ruled by the Democrats, and Joe Biden is also arming Israel and wholeheartedly supporting Israel as it carries out these crimes against humanity. Now, I should point out that Israel is the only country in West Asia, the so-called Middle East, that has nuclear weapons. And publicly, Israel has refused to admit this, but everyone knows it. It's an open secret. Experts estimate that Israel has at least 80 nuclear weapons. And as the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute pointed out, back in 2014, the United Nations General Assembly overwhelmingly approved a resolution on nuclear proliferation risks in the Middle East that urged Israel to renounce the possession of nuclear weapons, accede to the 1968 Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, the NPT. Israel is not a party to that. And the UN General Assembly called on Israel to place all of its nuclear facilities under the International Atomic Energy Agency's comprehensive safeguards